It's a normal day when Lee goes to the supermarket to buy some supplies. Everything is as usual, until suddenly, out of nowhere, portals appear and monsters pour out. The goblins immediately start killing the supermarket customers, sparing no one. Fortunately, Lee finds a machete and defends himself. Thanks to his experience as a mercenary, he easily takes down a few goblins. He gathers the frightened survivors, arms them with whatever he can find, and leads them forward to fight off the goblins that keep arriving. At first everything goes well, but then people start to tire, and the stream of goblins doesn't stop. Soon the military arrives, and with their firearms, Lee helps finish off the remaining monsters. At that moment, a system window appears in front of him with a notification that the game is restarting. While Lee tries to understand what it means, the portal glows again, and a huge orc steps out. Lee and the soldiers open fire, but the bullets are useless. The orc is immune to firearms. Then one of the survivors, who just moments ago was cowering in fear, rushes forward and knocks out the orc with a single swing of his axe, claiming the weak spot is the legs. Lee can't understand what's happening. How could this guy, who was trembling at the sight of a single goblin, suddenly become so strong and confident? Soon, all the other survivors show the same change, turning into seasoned monster slayers. But strangely, the changes affect everyone except our hero. Suddenly, he receives a system notification that explains everything. Due to a system failure, his regression has failed. Everyone else has regressed from the future. They know everything about the monsters and have years of battle experience. At that moment, Lee realizes he's completely screwed. But before he can even process it, another notification appears. The system has given him a unique special skill as compensation. It is Butterfly Effect Level 1, granted because he has not regressed. Every action he takes that changes the future will now give him bonus points. Lee stares at the words and understands. The Butterfly Effect means even the smallest action can cause a storm on the other side of the world. More orcs step out of the rift, and the players rush forward to fight. Lee fires while assessing the battle. With his new player status, he can now see each monster's name and level above its head. His bullets only leave faint scorch marks, proving useless against the orc's thick skin. Close combat weapons work better since the regressors already know their weak points. Realizing this, he returns the gun and picks up an axe. The system rewards him with a bonus point, showing that his new choices alter the future. When an orc charges, he throws the axe at its knee and finishes it off with a clean strike. Another point appears. Kim watches and explains that in the past, he had used a chainsaw instead of an axe. Lee smiles, understanding that every different choice creates a new future. Kim then tells him he once killed 3 orcs using thinner. Lee recalls it as a flammable chemical and decides to try it. The butterfly effect triggers again, granting him more points. He pours thinner on the orcs, sets them ablaze, and watches flames consume them. The system awards several bonus points, and confidence rises within him. A message appears announcing his brave rookie achievement and granting a new skill called Armor. A green aura hardens around his body, stunning everyone nearby. Kim curses in frustration, and another player complains that Lee always gains this power. Lee realizes this must be the same skill he had before, since the butterfly effect did not activate. As the rift begins to rumble again, everyone turns toward it, bracing for what comes next. Lee stands before the rift as a system window appears, naming it the Goblin and Orc Dungeon with a D- difficulty. He studies the screen and realizes this game seems designed to wipe out humanity. Each dungeon contains a set number of monsters that eventually pour out through gates, and closing a gate is the only way to stop them. He turns to the players and urges them to clear the dungeon quickly. He remembers that difficulty affects rewards and skill grades, but his goal is not loot. He wants to test his new armor skill and the stats gained from the butterfly effect. With 15 bonus points in hand, he invests them all into strength, raising it from 1 to 16. Confident in his experience with goblins and orcs, he enters the gate. The players follow, with Kim close behind, wondering if Lee had conquered this place in his past life. Inside, a goblin leaps from the shadows and bites Lee's arm. Armor activates instantly, blocking the attack. He crushes the goblin's skull with one hand and gains another bonus point. The others stare in disbelief as his strength grows rapidly within mere hours. A female player calls it impossible, and Kim mutters that armor must be why Lee was once Korea's strongest player. When Lee dismisses his words, jealousy overtakes Kim. He grabs a chainsaw and attacks, but the blade cannot pierce the glowing armor. Lee smiles coldly, crushes the chainsaw, and grips Kim's neck. As Kim gasps in fear, Lee recalls the truth of the battlefield. Greed always ends in destruction. He realizes these regressors thought they could steal what he once owned. Fixing his gaze on the rest, he warns them to stay back. Then he twists Kim's neck and lets the body fall. A heavy silence follows. Lee reminds himself that the world's old laws no longer matter. The game has begun, and mercy only leads to weakness. He faces the trembling players and tells them to leave if they value their lives. Lee looks down at Kim's corpse and realizes how cruel this game truly is. An inventory window floats above the body. offering his items to others. He mutters about its convenience and takes the Goblin Champion's necklace, noting that it now has a new owner. The system rewards him with bonus points for changing the future. The necklace greatly boosts his strength and agility, giving him the same power as leveling up twice. It may lose value later, but for now it is useful. When a player mocks its appearance, Lee ignores the remark and picks up the broken chainsaw to cut down remaining goblins. Even if the boost feels small, every bit of power counts. Soon, a notification appears stating that all monsters are dead and the dungeon will collapse in 3 minutes. He recalls that a gate closes only when all monsters inside are slain. Those who fail to escape vanish with it, which explains the short escape timer. By the gate, he spots the boy who had earlier cried at his father. Lee asks if he wishes to die here. The boy insists on staying with him. Lee orders him to leave, but the boy continues to beg. Frustrated, Lee scolds him again and assigns his 9 remaining bonus points to strength, raising it to 25, 28 with the necklace. The boy then reveals that they regressed 10 years into the past. He says his life will not change even after those 10 years, so he wishes to be a hero for once. He asks to follow Lee, calling himself Kim Minsu. His words and knowledge of future events catch Lee's attention. Minsu confesses that he fought monsters and dragons for 10 years, and now wishes to serve the hero of Korea. Lee finds him interesting and accepts his loyalty. As they leave the gate, Lee asks if being a sidekick is Minsu's only goal. Minsu replies that he wants to be second in command, calling Lee number 1. Lee challenges him to prove it by listing 10 future players, allies or enemies alike, warning that betrayal means death. Minsu agrees, and they exchange contact details before parting. 3 days later, the world continues to adjust to the regression. Many players stay silent, afraid of being called insane or hoping for a new life. But with everyone regressing, no one can stand out as the sole main character. Media and online platforms overflow with stories about the new world. Lee watches the news from his apartment. The anchor, Young Moon Young, reports that the world has turned into a game and introduces Lee Dongguk, director of the Asia-Pacific branch of the World Player Association. Young asks about the chaos surrounding the regression. Dongguk explains that it benefits humanity, as stronger players can protect others and restore order faster. Only those selling future knowledge pose a problem. Jung then questions whether the regression is linked to the final dungeon, since players regressed 3 hours after 21 people entered it. Lee listens and recalls that the final dungeon appeared 10 years later. 3 hours after its entry, everyone regressed. Jung speculates that it may be the true end of the game. As the broadcast ends, Lee mutters about filthy bastards and remembers that he was once the strongest player. Lee listens to the news and finally understands why the players at the hardware store called him Hero. A bonus point appears, and he guesses it is for the bubble wrap on his window. In his past life, he never bothered with such things. Now even small actions seem to reward him. He earns points for drinking water and sitting on the couch. His total rises to 37, and the steady growth lifts his mood. As he looks at the numbers, ambition stirs in him. He wonders how he became Korea's strongest player before, without the butterfly effect skill. He learned early that the weak must yield to the strong, and this belief drove him to chase power through money and battle. Now, with a real path toward absolute strength, he feels that dream returning. The news countdown ends, revealing statues of Lee Hwa-yoon, Park Moo-sung, and Choi Chul-sung, the heroes who entered the final dungeon. Seeing his own statue shocks him. It feels strange to be worshipped like this only 3 days after regression. He remembers being the highest paid mercenary in his past life, a weapon people bought for war. Back then, fame meant nothing to him, but now it feels different. The reporter explains that all players regressed after the dungeon event, suggesting that something inside caused it. Dongguk adds that the 3 heroes have vanished, hiding to protect their rare skills and items. Young questions if this is true, and Dongguk confirms it. Then he mentions a new rule. The heroes who entered the final dungeon are now forgiven for any crimes. Lee switches off the TV before hearing more. 2 things become clear to him. Many are hunting him, and he can now legally fight back. He puts on his jacket and steps outside. Running through the streets, he realizes he never came to Gwanghwamun Square in his past life. Each step proves the future is already changing. He spends his bonus points on agility, raising it to 52. While running, he reflects on how others focus on strength or mana. For him, the usual path no longer applies. His bonus points grow faster than anyone else's, making him an exception. He reaches the crowded square. Wearing a hoodie and mask, he mutters that this is insane. If people knew who he was, chaos would break out. He watches the crowd and senses hidden weapons in their inventories. Everyone wants to look strong. Fame has turned players into idols, but also into prey. He looks at the statues again. People once prayed before them like worshippers before gods. Now the area is empty. His eyes stop on his own statue, marked with the title, Shadow of Death. Suddenly, a player named Kim Chang-bae appears and smashes the statue's head with a mace. A system message appears, granting Lee bonus points for changing the future. Changbei lands nearby and hides his weapon, unaware of who stands before him. Changbei smashes the statue and starts to run. Lee follows, but with his agility above 50, his movements feel harder to control. After a short chase, he catches Changbei and grips his neck. He pulls off his mask, and the fear in Changbei's eyes shows recognition. Lee demands to know where he was going. Changbei tries to reach for his mace, but Lee seizes his hand and takes it. The weapon once belonged to an orc champion and holds a chance to stun, increasing attack and strength. Lee questions how Changbei obtained such a rare weapon in just 5 days. Convinced he must belong to a guild, Lee tightens his grip and reminds him of his immunity to crimes. Changbei gasps for air and begs to be released. Lee demands his name and guild. Trembling, Changbei admits he is from the General Guild. Lee orders him to continue. When Lee brings up Project Lee Huayun, Changbei reveals that it is a plan by the guild to collect all the skills and items Lee once had. After some hesitation, he admits the first target is the stealth skill. It lies in the Lycan dungeon, which will open in 3 days. He adds that 100 players will wait there, confident that Lee will return for it. Lee realizes those players must be regressors. Later, Lee meets Minsu and explains what he learned. Minsu distrusts Changbei and asks permission to kill him, but Lee refuses. Minsu insists the guild will act sooner, while Changbei claims it will happen tomorrow. Lee knows one of them is lying. Their argument grows until Lee grabs both by the neck and demands proof. Minsu shows his phone with an article stating that Lee will appear at the Lycan dungeon on the 7th of January, tomorrow. He explains that the dungeon appeared early in the game and that Lycans are far stronger than goblins or orcs. They move in packs, and no one cleared the dungeon before. When they escaped, they destroyed cities and killed thousands. Lee now understands why the dungeon became infamous. It caused massive destruction, and people feared it more than any other. Minsu reminds him that he was the one who destroyed it in the past. Lee turns to Changbei, demanding to know who ordered him to destroy the statue. Changbei snaps and reaches into his inventory. Lee reacts first and breaks his neck. A message appears, granting a bonus point. Lee realizes he must have spared Changbei in his past life. The world is changing faster now because of the regressors. He turns to Minsu and mentions finding a way to kill Lycans, perhaps using poison. Minsu questions why he is asking about things he should already know. Lee cuts him off and admits he never regressed, warning him to keep it secret. Minsu is stunned and explains that such knowledge means nothing without power. Lycans are level 5 monsters, and lower-level players cannot enter. Lee nods, realizing he must reach level 5 soon. Lee is only level 2 but knows levels mean little. With 80 stat points and 162 bonus points, his total reaches 242. By his estimate, he matches a level 80 player. Still, Minsu reminds him that even with such power, he cannot face the Lycans yet, and his low level prevents dungeon entry. Lee asks Minsu to take him somewhere to level up. Minsu explains that only goblin and orc dungeons exist for now since new gates open slowly, and the Lycan gate appears tomorrow. Most players ignore the weaker dungeons, calling them a waste of time. Lee calls those monsters cuties and uses his bonus points to raise strength to 187, strengthening his armor skill with it. They arrive at a goblin and orc dungeon. A goblin throws stones, but Lee moves swiftly and kills 2 with ease. His speed and strength leave no room for resistance. While fighting, he asks Minsu about skill stones. Minsu explains that they rest near a monster's heart, and their color shows class. White for common, purple for rare, yellow for unique, and red for legendary. The stealth skill from the Lycan dungeon belongs to the rare class, so its stone glows purple. Lee asks about the meaning of these classes. Minsu tells him that rare and below can appear multiple times, but unique and legendary exist only once. Skills can also level up, increasing their effect. When Lee asks about special skills, Minsu admits he has never heard of them, and Lee drops the topic. The next day, Lee reaches level 5. He and Minsu stand at the site where the Lycan gate will soon appear. A crowd already gathers. Lee instructs Minsu to observe while he handles the rest alone. Ahead, around 100 players from the General Guild wait. Only 5 can enter the dungeon, and Lee must be among them. A man steps forward and announces that this is where Lee Huayun gained the stealth skill in the past. He declares the General Guild will seize it this time. The crowd cheers, confident of victory. 5 minutes later, the countdown begins. When it ends, the gate opens. Lee bursts forward before anyone can react. Players shout and try to block him, but none can match his speed. He reaches the gate first and enters, followed by 4 others. The system announces the dungeon is full. Outside, Minsu watches in awe, realizing Lee has already surpassed what any regressor could achieve in just 5 days. As soon as they saw Lee, one of the players shouted to prepare. 3 pulled out goblin chef whips to restrain his hands and neck, while the 4th threw a net over him. Their plan was clear. They knew they could not defeat him and tried to trap him instead. Lee activated his armor skill and easily turned the situation around, binding them instead. As they struggled under the net, Lycans rushed in with furious growls. Lee wondered if rage was part of their nature. The trapped players begged for mercy, admitting they were only following orders. Before they could explain more, the lichens attacked. The players assumed everyone would die, but Lee crushed the beasts without effort. He recalled that wolves and dogs share the same weak point, the muzzle. Years ago, a detection dog had bitten him during a mission, and he subdued it by gripping its snout. Remembering that, he grabbed the lichens by their muzzles and crushed them. The monsters fell, unable to move. When the players asked why he did not finish them, Lee explained that killing all monsters would collapse the dungeon and close the gate. He planned to find the lichen with the skill stone first, and then slip out quietly before anyone outside noticed. When the lichens rose again, Lee muttered that this was not enough and shattered their bones completely. Then he turned back to the trapped players and demanded the name of their leader. Trembling, they revealed it was Choi Chulsung. Lee recalls the name carved beside his own statue and asks if Choi ordered them to come for the stealth skill. They admit it, explaining they only followed orders, but one accuses another of betrayal. Lee grabs the one who shouted and breaks his shoulder, reminding them he is not here to play games. He recognizes Choi Chulsung, the general guild leader, who once fought beside him in the final dungeon. Though never a true comrade, Choi was still part of his team. Now that same man has turned against him, but Lee feels no betrayal, knowing the world runs on self-interest. As more lichens appear, Lee notices that when some die, new ones spawn to keep their number fixed. This dungeon allows 25 at a time, which benefits him. He removes the net from the tied players and mutters that Chulsung should understand why his men must die, then throws them toward the charging lichens. The dungeon allows only 5 players at once, so when one group dies, others can enter. Soon, new players enter and find the severed heads of their comrades. Rage drives them forward, but Lee defeats them easily and binds them as well. When he demands to know which lichen carries the skill stone, one reveals it is the one with white eyebrows. Their quick cooperation shows how fear has broken them. Lee searches and finds the wounded lichen. He tears it open with his bare hands, blood and flesh scattering around. Disgusted, he thinks that Minsu should handle such work in the future. Inside, he finds the stone containing the stealth skill. The prisoners whisper that it is the same skill used by a hero in the final dungeon and regret losing the chance to claim it. Lee considers selling the stone for wealth but decides otherwise. Since the game began, power has stood above all. He remembers his orphaned childhood and the wars he survived. True power now lies within his reach, and he will seize it to shape a new history. He swallows the stone, but a message states that the skill is locked until level 10. Frustration rises as his current level is 6. Determined, he resolves to grow stronger. He uses his 102 bonus points to increase strength, raising it to 289. Knowing the guild's men wait outside, he realizes a direct fight would be dangerous. To stay safe, he spares one lichen so the dungeon remains open. More will spawn, letting him train further. With his immense strength, even a level 5 lichen poses no challenge. He focuses on controlling his power to avoid killing them too fast. After steady fighting, he reaches level 10. The stealth skill unlocks, and he activates it, turning his hand transparent while his clothes stay visible. The players explain that at higher levels, even clothes vanish. Lee checks his skills and sees progress levels beside each. When they confirm that full invisibility starts at level 2, he removes his clothes and activates the skill again, disappearing completely. He realizes these players came for the same skill he once possessed in his past life. If they had succeeded, they would have killed him for it. As he prepares to leave, lichens close in around the tied players, who beg for mercy. Lee orders them to be silent and walks away without looking back. Outside the gate, the crowd notices it has opened again. They whisper, wondering who died and who will go next. At the same time, Lee steps out unseen under stealth. Watching the restless people, he mutters that the view is worth seeing. Then he spots Minsu, taps his shoulder, and tells him to stay quiet before pointing toward a taxi for them to take. Later, while scrolling through the news, Lee reads reports about his return and the lichen dungeon incident. The headlines call his hunting method shocking and show the bodies of 8 general guild members killed by lichens. Minsu shows him a live broadcast where anchors discuss Lee's appearance. One mentions his calm confidence before the final dungeon in their previous life, when he raised his middle finger to reporters and became a symbol of defiance. They now debate if his fame comes only from that attitude or something more. The discussion shifts when Park Jong-sik, chairman of the Player Skills and Technology Association, joins the broadcast. He claims that the moment Lee appeared in the lichen dungeon, the game effectively ended. His statement causes outrage, and even Lee is surprised. Anchors accuse Jong-sik of spreading confusion, but he remains firm. He explains that his team studied the lichen corpses and found each skull caved in by a single strike. Given the hardness of lichen bones, such power could only come from a level 40 player with all points in strength. When asked if special equipment could explain it, Jong-sik denies it, saying no known item could cause that level of damage. Holding up a lichen head, he He points at the wound and claims Li Huayun crushed their skulls with a flick of his finger. Some anchors laugh, others demand his resignation. Li reflects that those denying Zhongxik's words are people with wealth and influence, guilds, associations, and industries profiting from the game. They fear the truth will destroy morale and reduce profits. Zhongxik ends by saying that if the game reaches its final stage again, Li will surely be among those who finish it. The anchors dismiss his claim, though one jokingly connects Li's past gesture to his current power. Li mutters in disbelief and questions how she became an anchor. He reflects that his path now differs from his previous life. Only his strength remains the same. He realizes that without higher levels, stats alone are useless. He could not enter the Lichen dungeon or use stealth properly at first because of level limits. To grow stronger, he needs more experience. Determined, Li begins hunting lichens in another dungeon. What once felt satisfying now feels dull. He mutters that he is tired of them and wants something new. Minsu warns that this is still the best hunting ground, but Li asks about the next dungeon. Minsu mentions the level 14 Blue Monkey dungeon, though no player can enter it yet since only 5 days have passed. Li sees an opportunity. If no one can enter, then the Blue Monkeys will emerge on their own. Minsu recalls how dangerous they were in their past lives. Li admits it might be risky, but remains confident. With bonus points equal to what others would gain after over 100 levels, he believes that in front of true strength, no monster matters. Those who never awakened as players did not regress, yet they already know the Blue Monkeys will soon appear and destroy everything. That is why the streets are empty. 6 days after the game began, no one is strong enough to face such monsters. Li and Minsu walk into an underground parking lot. The silence feels heavy. Minsu admits he has only seen blue monkeys on the news but knows how terrifying they are. They stand above level 10, can attack from range, and even mimic humans. A car horn suddenly echoes in the distance, and Minsu guesses the monsters are playing with it. Li notes that they have already escaped the gate. He opens his status window and moves all 251 bonus points into agility, raising it to 578. In a blur, he vanishes toward the monsters. Minsu watches in disbelief, knowing that even one hit from a blue monkey could kill him. Li cuts through the monsters with ease. Their attempt to retreat fails as the rules prevent them from re-entering the dungeon. He sees fear in their eyes, the same fear humans show when death is near. Minsu finds it strange that creatures once feared by humanity now flee in terror. Grinning, Li chases them down, knowing that constant leveling is the only way to stay in the game. Without it, he will lose access to dungeons and skills. When he checks again, he has reached level 17 with 202 bonus points. Minsu is stunned that he gained so much in 6 days, but Li feels exhaustion creeping in. His low stamina cannot balance his speed and strength anymore. He adds all points into stamina, raising it to 213, and resumes the fight. The blue monkeys hurl debris at him, but nothing slows him down. When the last one falls, Minsu stares in awe, realizing that if people saw this, they would lose their minds. Li then remembers the security cameras recording everything. Standing near the gate, Minsu suggests destroying it. He explains that if it stays open, more monsters will spawn, making it a farming ground that blocks stronger ones from appearing. Li agrees the blue monkeys are now too weak to give him real growth. He only came because no higher dungeon exists yet. Minsu adds that clearing dungeons unlocks stronger ones, and humanity never allows weaker gates to stay. Li asks if this means defeating more dungeons will only make life harder for others. Minsu nods, pointing out that Li just cleared a level 14 gate in 6 days, something that took nearly a month in their past lives. When Li asks how he knows, Minsu shows him an app where players post dungeon records and strategies. The first clear time becomes official, and top players gain national recognition. Hearing this, Li decides to post their record under the name Fearless, a word that means without fear. Minsu agrees and uploads it. Soon, the forums explode with excitement and panic over the arrival of level 15 dungeons. Meanwhile, inside a nearby shelter, civilians watch the broadcast. A little girl asks her mother when they can go home. The woman says it will take 29 days. Then a man shouts that the dungeon has been cleared. People call him a liar until the screens light up with footage of Li slaying the blue monkeys. Cheers fill the hall as they realize it is true. On the player site, everyone notices the new name Fearless. No one knows who he is, but it does not matter. To the people watching, a new hero has appeared. Li and his friend walk along the road, discussing the events of their past lives. His friend recalls that the level 15 dungeon was cleared 41 days after the game began, but it happened in Japan where the Crimson-Eyed Horse appeared. Korea also had a level 15 gate, yet no one was strong enough to clear it. When Li asks about their next monster, his friend explains it is a level 15 giant bear. He adds that monsters below level 20 are not dangerous since they lack skills, though higher levels take longer to defeat. He remembers that 71 days once passed between the clearing of the level 19 and level 20 dungeons. As they continue walking, his friend wonders if 300 kilometers is too far. Li replies that each step gives him bonus points, so walking itself is worthwhile. This makes his friend reflect that even small actions can change the future. Dropping a pen or avoiding a bug might alter what would have happened, so Lee walks carefully, aware that every choice shapes his path. A truck suddenly honks behind them. The driver yells and curses, ordering them to move aside. Lee answers calmly, but the man keeps shouting and speeds up. Anger flashes across Lee's face, and before his friend can stop him, Lee disappears. He catches up to the truck, confronting the driver and warning him to control his temper if he wants to live. The driver apologizes quickly, and Lee lets it go, choosing peace over anger. As they resume their journey, Lee realizes the dungeons are opening faster than before. This gives him a chance to widen the gap between himself and others. Those with memories of the past are losing their advantage, while he continues to grow stronger on his own. The scene shifts to the battle inside the level 15 dungeon. A massive bear towers over Lee. He knows that once level 20 monsters appear, they will start using skills, so he must grow stronger quickly. The bear strikes hard, sending him back, but he dodges and climbs its arm. With a burst of strength, he crushes its neck and watches it fall. More beasts rush in, but he defeats them all. Meanwhile, debates spread online about who cleared the level 14 dungeon. Some argue it was Lee Huayun, others say Park Musung. His friend mentions that a level 16 dungeon has already been cleared by Poison Choi, whose real name is Choi Chulsung. He was once one of the men who entered the final dungeon with Lee. Lee reflects that Choi must have gained a rare skill from his past life. His friend recalls that Choi was the Poison King and leader of the strongest guild in Korea, the General Guild. Lee remembers how Choi once tried to steal his stealth skill and decides he must move faster. When Lee asks about Choi's weapon, his friend recalls a black dagger once belonging to the Golden Leopard, a level 20 monster from Korea. Lee dismisses the memory, focused only on his own progress. His friend updates him that the level 17 and 18 dungeons have been cleared on January 9th and 10th. As they exit another dungeon, Lee asks about the next ones. The level 19 dungeon lies near Gangnam Station, and the level 21 dungeon will open at Yuldong Park in Bundang. Lee notes it would take about 30 minutes to reach there without traffic. His friend feels relieved that the area has fewer people, but Lee reminds him that even if crowds appear, no one can enter. Only he can claim the weapon again. Now at level 21, Lee holds 744 bonus points. He channels all of them into strength, raising it to 1,033. A system notification appears, announcing that his strength has surpassed 1,000 for the first time. He earns a new title, King of Strength, and gains the Petrify skill, which freezes an opponent for 3 seconds. Testing the skill on his friend confirms its power. His friend compares Lee's strength to that of young Xiangwei, the Emperor of China, who once led all players there and cleared countless dungeons. Lee wonders if his new skill is the same as the Emperor's, and his friend confirms it. Lee then instructs his friend to go to Yuldong Park and watch who gathers there. Meanwhile, he will clear the level 19 dungeon at Gangnam Station. Minsu agrees and promises to contact him if anything unusual happens. With that, they part ways, each moving toward their next task. Lee stands before the level 19 gate, knowing he must clear it to unlock the level 20 Golden Leopard dungeon. The place is filled with crimson-eyed moles. He recalls that the level 20 gate will open once any level 19 dungeon is cleared, but since no one else seems capable, he decides to take on the task himself. Soldiers surround the area, managing the evacuation. One of them stops Lee and asks for identification. Lee admits he has none. A mole suddenly bursts from the ground and the soldiers fire, but their bullets do nothing. The soldier urges him to leave, but Lee calmly explains that guns cannot harm such monsters. When asked if he is a player, he nods. Another mole surfaces behind them. Lee activates his Petrify skill, freezing it mid-air, then crushes its neck. Seeing this, the soldier steps aside and lets him through. Inside, Lee studies the dungeon. The moles are not only strong but cunning, hiding deep underground. Knowing he cannot dig them out, he takes the blue monkey's fur from his inventory. Burning it releases toxic smoke that lures monsters. The fumes spread through the burrows, forcing the moles to surface. Lee catches each one and kills them effortlessly. Soon, all 15 lie dead. A system message appears announcing the dungeon's clearance and the gates collapse in 3 minutes. His phone rings. Minsu warns that reporters have surrounded the Golden Leopard dungeon. Lee tells him to drive them away and says he will arrive soon. Minsu finds it strange that the General Guild has not shown up despite knowing about Lee's stealth skill. Lee concludes they are avoiding him because they know crossing paths with him means death. Lee leaves the soldiers behind and drives to Yuldong Park. When he arrives, the place is crowded. Annoyed, he calls Minsu, reminding him he was supposed to clear the area. Minsu explains he tried, but no one listened. Lee steps out, determined to handle it himself. As soon as the reporters spot him, they rush forward shouting his name. Questions fly from every direction. Some blame him for lowering player morale. Others accuse him of causing chaos with his fast dungeon clears. Some even beg for autographs and photos. The noise grates on him. After years of war, he has learned to value silence. He stares at the crowd and declares that weakness is not a sin, but blaming others for it is. Those who do should rot in hell. His sharp words quiet the crowd for a moment. Then one reporter brings up Boward, a Canadian player who once entered the final dungeon. Boward has claimed Lee is strong now, but will be the weakest among high-level players later. Lee asks which station has the highest ratings. When they point to one reporter, he turns toward the camera, raises his middle finger, and delivers his answer to Boward. Lee steps into the Golden Leopard dungeon, where 7 golden leopards roam. The dungeon allows only 2 players and holds a B+ difficulty, known for granting rare items. He recalls that hunting these beasts usually takes 2 skilled players, and B+ dungeons are never easy. One leopard roars and stuns him. He expected this, knowing the roar prevents him from using skills for a while. Without his abilities, he must fight differently. When another leopard lunges, he evades its claws, aware that even a scratch could be fatal. He activates his stealth, moving unseen through the battlefield. From the shadows, he strikes swiftly, relying on speed and precision rather than defense. Realizing that grappling is his only option, he seizes a leopard and slams it to the ground. The fight drags on, but he endures. At last, all 7 beasts fall. A system message declares the dungeon cleared, and he checks his inventory. Inside lies a dagger named the Dagger of Destruction. Its description says it channels the energy of its wielder's skills. Lee equips it, noting that it has no fixed stats yet radiates immense power. Activating armor, he watches the dagger gain the same skill. When he turns invisible, the blade disappears with him. Its strength grows with his own, just as it did in his past life. Satisfied, he prepares to leave as the gate begins to collapse. Outside, a crowd of reporters swarms him again. They shout his name and bombard him with questions about Fearless, the dungeon, and his weapon. Their noise irritates him. He spots Minsu nearby, apologizing for failing to clear the area. Lee understands. His friend lacks the influence to stop them. He notices something strange. No players have appeared. Normally, many would rush here to steal his loot or skills, yet none have come. The thought unsettles him. Then a reporter calls out, asking when he will gain the unique skill Eye of the God. Lee freezes, confused, as he has never heard of it. His friend signals him after hearing the name Eye of the God, reminding Lee that it was once his skill. Reporters close in, demanding to know his stats and level. Lee answers calmly that he is level 24 with a strength of 1033. Silence falls. He declares that he is beyond the law, and warns that if anyone bothers him again, he will kill them. The next day, chaos spreads worldwide. Newspapers print headlines calling him the birth of a god and mock Boward's earlier taunts. Others report that the Golden Leopard dungeon was cleared in less than 40 minutes. Governments express concern, and North Korea labels him a global threat. Every outlet writes about his refusal to give interviews and his threat toward the media. Later, Lee and Minsu sit in his living room. Lee asks about the Eye of the God. Minsu confirms its existence, saying Lee possessed it in his past life. It allowed him to see opponents' stats and inventory, making it a unique and unmatched skill. As it leveled up, it evolved through a process called a second awakening, changing not only in power, but in form. Minsu speculates that at higher levels, the skill could detect even slight movements in an enemy's pupils or heartbeat, giving Lee perfect precision in combat. Lee asks where it might be found, and Minsu suggests checking the player website, which tracks dungeon records. Though not flawless, it could narrow the search. Lee knows time is short. Many players have regressed and will race to claim the skill. Large guilds and low-level players alike will hunt for it. Minsu reminds him that he was one of the strongest players in his past life, and that people talk about him constantly. Rumors about Project Lee Hwa-Yun spread rapidly, and major guilds have begun studying records of those who entered the final dungeon. Lee wonders if these records were made because they foresaw regression, but Minsu clarifies that they were made for murder. Guilds documented every powerful player, noting where they obtained their items and skills. That knowledge allowed them to plan thefts and assassinations. The General Guild once tried to steal Lee's stealth skill, using whips and nets after learning he had armor. Even after failing, they tracked him closely, waiting for another chance. Lee realizes these records are treasure maps leading straight to his past power. Minsu admits that his own guild once collected such data too. Skills and items were everything in this world, and killing became a natural part of survival. By tracking dungeon gates, guilds could guess exactly when someone gained a new skill. Lee reflects that the General Guild, led by the Poison King Choi Chul-sung, is the most powerful in Korea and one of his old rivals. They already know his past skills, and may now be chasing something greater, the Eye of the God. Minsu suggests they may be using their memories of the past to forge powerful weapons early. Lee agrees, but adds that they likely avoided the Golden Leopard dungeon for 2 reasons. First, they plan to let him collect his old skills and items, then kill him to take them all at once. Second, fear. His strength has already terrified them enough that none dare to face him again. Lee checks the game website and sees that the level 21 Black Orc dungeon has been cleared by the ID Poison Choi. He notes that Choi is working hard. Earlier, players from the United States and China were on the leaderboard, but from level 20 onward, only his and Choi Chul-sung's names remain. He is now level 25 with 732 bonus points, which he assigns to concentration, raising it to 733. He reflects that no one can yet become emperor since that title requires a stat over 1000. When his strength surpassed that mark, he gained the title King of Strength and unlocked the skill Petrify, once owned by Emperor Yongseongwei in his past life. Since only a level 21 dungeon has been cleared so far, no one could possibly reach that power yet. His friend agrees with his decision, noting that concentration is vital. Lee explains that it enhances combat awareness, evasion, and precision, letting him use his strength to its fullest. It also helps when skills are unusable. When asked if he needs more mana, he replies that he never runs out since he controls it efficiently. Lee decides to improve his stealth skill next. His friend suggests brute force might be faster, but Lee explains that stealth offers information through spying and infiltration, making it more useful. He plans to raise it to level 2 before visiting the General Guild headquarters. As they step outside, his friend comments on his plain clothes and insists he should dress to match his growing power. Though reluctant, Lee agrees and follows him to a store known for dungeon player outfits. The shopkeeper, recognizing Lee, offers the clothes as a gift in his honor. Amused by the gesture, Lee accepts and leaves after changing into his new attire. He then asks how to raise stealth. His friend explains that proficiency comes from understanding and repeatedly using the skill. Certain actions increase proficiency points, which trigger system notifications. Lee figures that other regressed players already know these methods and decides to begin testing. They enter a goblin and orc dungeon. Goblins pose no threat, so Lee focuses on orcs. He activates stealth as one roars nearby, testing different approaches. When he tries combining armor with stealth, it fails, so he switches back and strikes the orc's neck, gaining proficiency. Realizing the process works, he continues hunting until stealth reaches level 2. Now, anything touching his skin can become transparent depending on his mana. Satisfied, Lee asks about the General Guild headquarters. His friend tells him it is in Cheongdam, Gangnam District. Lee smiles, remarking that it must be a wealthy place. Lee stands outside the General Guild headquarters with his stealth skill active. 2 guild players walk ahead of him, complaining about the trouble caused by Lee Huayun. One mutters that they only pretend to help while collecting money, and the other warns him to stay quiet. As they swipe their cards, the guard greets them, and Lee slips in behind. One player pauses, sensing something strange but dismisses it. Lee considers it a close call and listens as an announcement calls all executives to a 9:30 meeting. He decides to follow. Inside the conference room, he keeps stealth active. A man opens the meeting, noting the date as January 14th. An A-rank player mentions that the guild master is absent, clearing a level 23 dungeon. Another worries about his condition. A B-rank player declares that their master will soon claim the Eye of God, and Lee notes the phrase carefully. They discuss monitoring Lee Huayun, complaining that his name dominates every meeting and that they cannot find him. Vice Master Choi Hansung remarks that if they cannot locate him, capturing him is hopeless. Lee smiles inwardly, knowing he is right there. Hansung adds that losing the stealth skill, the dagger, and now the Eye of God, would destroy them. The man leading the meeting claims Lee will appear for the Eye of God. An executive objects, saying Lee's power has grown beyond belief. He waves a newspaper reporting Lee's strength of 1033, calling it impossible. Hansung dismisses it as a bluff meant to provoke fear and asks for the plan. The man presents documents detailing Lee's past actions, revealing that he claimed the Eye of God in the level 34 Black Ogre dungeon, killing 4 guild members. He asks those who died to raise their hands, and Han Wusung, Lee Yujin, Park Gwangho, and Go Sangyun respond. Lee silently observes them, recalling their fates. Yujin recounts that the dungeon always holds a rare skill, and that their master sent them there years ago. They had dismissed Lee as a weak player, and that mistake led to their deaths. Fear shows in their voices as they remember. Park admits he still shivers at the memory. Yujin explains that the unique skill Eye of God always appears in that dungeon, and that their knowledge now includes details gained after regression. Lee glances at the documents, noting the dungeon's location and the monster's weaknesses. Hansung asks for their plan. Yujin explains that their master will go himself this time, and since only they and Lee know the dungeon well, they will take the chance to kill him and retrieve the Eye of God. He proposes using SA2 on the Black Ogres. Another player protests, reminding him that the drug is banned. Yujin insists there is no other way to stop Lee. Park adds that they will support their master and return with the eye. Listening from the shadows, Lee quietly wonders if they are ready to die the same way again. Human imagination knows no bounds. Even as monsters threaten the world, humans study their remains to craft tools for survival. Monster materials are unlike anything found on Earth. Some are harder than iron yet light, some burn better than coal, and others are shaped into complex designs. These discoveries advance human technology, though not always for good. One such creation is the drug SA2. Lee messages his friend to ask about the drug. His friend is alarmed and warns that it is banned by the World Player Association. When Lee asks about its purpose, his friend explains that it amplifies a monster's power. A test once turned a goblin strong enough to defeat a level 20 golden leopard. The drug was originally made as a weapon to unleash monsters in enemy lands, but it caused chaos, leading to soldiers and players dying to weaker beasts. In the guild meeting, Li Yujin explains that SA2 lasts 24 hours. When Li Huayun appears at the Black Ogre Gate, they plan to inject the drug into the monsters, raising their strength to level 100. After killing him, they will seize his skills, items, and the Eye of God. Hansung approves but warns everyone to keep silent or the guild will collapse if the truth spreads. He stresses that the Eye of God is too valuable and urges everyone to grow stronger before facing the level 33 Black Ogres. Yujin agrees and thanks them for their support. Suddenly, Lee receives a system warning that his stealth will deactivate soon due to low mana. He regrets not investing more points earlier and quickly applies all 243 bonus points to mana, raising it to 341. Yujin senses the sudden shift and questions who just used a skill. Guangho dismisses it, but Yujin insists he felt a strong flow of mana. Before suspicion spreads further, someone enters to announce the guildmaster's arrival. Choi Chulsung walks in and the room grows tense. Lee feels the power radiating from him. Chulsung assures everyone there is no need for alarm. Hansung mentions SA2, insisting it is their only chance to defeat Huayun, whose strength seems impossible. Chulsung replies that Huayun does not lie, though his power is indeed unbelievable. He then orders everyone to move out. As Chulsung passes, Lee considers confronting him, but decides to focus on the archives. He follows a man carrying documents, slipping through the door as the man scans his eye for entry. His high concentration keeps his movements silent. Inside, he reveals himself, binds the man with blue monkey fur, and seizes the records from his past life. He studies the papers under the flicker of his lighter. The records are detailed, describing every battle and every player he once killed. Reading them brings a faint sense of sadness. He turns to the list of items and skills, each tied to the monsters they came from, and finds the accuracy almost admirable. Huayun's past records reveal that after clearing the level 245 dungeon, his body changed completely. His darkened form grew unstable and destroyed everything in its path. The sight was beyond description. It became a legendary grade skill that players later named Li Huayun's Shadow, earning him the title Shadow of Death. After the world reset, this same power now belongs to Choi Chulsung, master of the General Guild. Reading the records, Lee realizes this is the final entry about his past and future. He suspects it is only a copy and demands the original before destroying the archive. Shattering the supercomputer that held all guild data, he earns a vast amount of bonus points, showing how much the guild's fall has shifted the world's balance. The destruction of the archive itself alters the course of the future. Knowing strength must come first, Lee invests all bonus points into his strength stat, raising it to 2054. He messages his friend, explaining that they cannot predict how much the SA2 drug will enhance monsters. His friend replies that a strength of 2000 alone is extraordinary. When Lee asks what else he learned, his friend explains that the drug was originally made to increase dungeon rewards. Humans believed stronger monsters would make harder dungeons and better drops, so they experimented by injecting monsters with the drug. However, the system never recognized the change, making the drug unpredictable and dangerous. Lee finds the drug troublesome and worries about the General Guild's plan to use it on Black Ogres. His friend suggests testing it first. They inject a goblin with the drug, and it roars with sudden power before charging. Lee reacts quickly, grabs it by the skull, and crushes it, noting its speed, but realizing its strength is still far below his own. Later, Lee enters a level 27 dungeon filled with tooth zombies. Their rotten stench makes it hard to focus. They move as fast as blue monkeys, and their iron jaws can crush anything. Even breaking their skulls or organs fails to stop them, so Lee decides decapitation is the only way. Using stealth, he slices through them one by one. The fight grants no experience, but he earns 456 bonus points. Though useful, it still feels lacking. As the last zombie falls, the system announces that all monsters are defeated and the gate will collapse in 3 minutes. Another message appears, stating that the proficiency of his butterfly skill has increased and that his actions are greatly altering the future. Lee pauses, wondering what the system truly means by those words. Lee steps out of the gate and calls for his friend. He asks if any questions remain, explaining that he does not need them because of regression. Each player received 3 questions from the system at the start, and his friend reveals that he already used one to ask why regression happened, leaving 2. Lee suggests asking about skill proficiency. His friend hesitates, worried it might be a waste, but eventually agrees. When he asks about the proficiency points for butterfly effect, the system responds that no such skill exists. Shocked, he tells Lee that the system could not find it. He wonders if Lee possesses a skill beyond the game itself, something like a bug or an illegal program. Before they can discuss further, a new dungeon gate appears. A message states that a level 1 special dungeon with S-rank difficulty has been unlocked, and only one player can enter. Lee receives a notification that he has gained over 4,000 points through Butterfly Effect, which triggered the dungeon's appearance. He advises his friend to ask the system about it, but his friend refuses, frustrated that the last question was wasted. He complains about the game's creator, saying the system denies what clearly exists. Lee points toward the gate, reminding him that the system's denial means little when the proof stands before them. A warning flashes that the gate will close in 30 seconds. They both wonder if it can shut on its own. Lee steps forward, telling his friend to question the system about the gate while he goes inside. The system responds that special dungeons appear when a player or small group grows too powerful compared to others. These dungeons are designed by the god of the game to restore balance. Clearing one grants a special skill made to counter an unstoppable player. His friend realizes the gate appeared because of Lee, and that any player who clears it could gain a skill strong enough to challenge him. The system explains it could not answer earlier because information about special dungeons was only added moments ago. Annoyed, his friend mutters that Lee is about to grow even stronger. Inside the dungeon, Lee walks through a dim corridor, noting that an S-rank dungeon should at least grant a unique skill. Suddenly, a goblin appears ahead, smiling eerily. To Lee's shock, the creature speaks, calling itself the guardian of the special dungeon and revealing its level, 200. It mocks his surprise, promising him a quick and painless death, then raises a blazing sphere of fire and hurls it toward him. Lee activates his armor as the fire hits him. The system notifies that the armor's proficiency has increased. He realizes it grows stronger when enduring attacks beyond its defense. The skill advances to level 2, gaining the ability to release a shockwave. The goblin looks startled by Lee's strength and charges with another wave of fire. Lee uses his petrify skill, freezing the creature mid-air before slamming it into the ground. The goblin grunts in disbelief, but when Lee grabs its head to crush it, the goblin blocks the attack. Lee is surprised that its skull remains intact. Grinning, the goblin summons 3 clones. One clone praises Lee's power, while another wonders how he survived so long. They launch energy blasts, but Lee dodges swiftly. When one clone attacks from behind, Lee blocks it and strikes back. His armor releases a shockwave, sending the goblin flying. The force amazes him. The goblin stares at the fallen clone in disbelief, muttering that no human should be this strong. Lee charges again and destroys another clone. The remaining 2 retreat, but he does not stop. He notes their understanding of human speech while pursuing them. Pouring all his bonus points into strength, he pushes it to 3,486. Lee rushes in with overwhelming power. One clone cries that their deaths cannot be part of the god's plan. Lee punches, obliterating him instantly. Fear fills the last goblin's eyes before Lee vanishes using stealth and pierces its neck with his dagger. The creature collapses. He levels up, realizing it is the result of slaying such a high-level monster. A notification announces that all monsters have been defeated, and the gate will close in 3 minutes. The level 200 guardian has fallen, and a special skill has been granted to him. Excitement rises within as he awaits the reward. Lee receives the special skill Eye of the Reversal, which allows him to read another player's memories. However, it cannot read the memories of players stronger than him, and can only be used once every 24 hours. The skill has the power to close the knowledge gap between past and present players who once relied on experience and memory to stay ahead. Stepping out of the gate, Lee meets his friend, who immediately asks if he gained another special skill. Instead of explaining, Lee decides to demonstrate and uses the skill on him. A system message appears, asking which memory to view. Lee selects the time they were in the supermarket. The memory unfolds before him like a scene, complete with options to pause and rewind. He skips ahead to see Minsu's father dying and the guilt that haunts his friend. Then he sees Minsu looking at him with admiration, believing Lee could change the world and defeat all monsters. Lee smiles at what he sees and repeats his friend's thoughts aloud, making Minsu blush. Declaring they will slay every monster and rule the world, Lee glances again into his friend's mind and catches him referring to him as my lord. He teases Minsu, who becomes flustered and begs him to stop. Lee laughs and decides to wait for the level 29 dungeon. Later, Lee sits in his apartment and uploads an update to the game site, announcing the clear of the level 28 Golden Tooth Zombie dungeon. Reactions flood in. Some accuse him of unfairness, others praise him, and many worry about the destruction caused by stronger monsters. A few doubt the final dungeon can ever be cleared, while others call him a god. Lee ignores the debate and focuses on posting his completion times, as the official rankings by the government and World Player Association depend on them. Reaching the top 10 would grant him freedom from laws and taxes, but his real goal remains the final dungeon, which promises power and fame beyond measure. Minsu returns with news that Choi Chulsung has cleared the Nice Poisonous Spider dungeon, an achievement that seems impossible without a new ability. Lee suspects Choi is after the Eye of God and expects their confrontation at the Black Ogre dungeon. The scene shifts to a level 30 dungeon in South Korea. known as Darkhorn Hogs. Lee faces a massive hog whose horns expand with every roar. One strike could kill him, but he also knows the horn's immense value. His mana runs low since Eye of the Reversal consumes much energy. With 112 bonus points left, he allocates them all to mana, feeling renewed strength as he charges toward the beasts. The hogs charge toward Lee, and he activates his armor. Grabbing their horns, he slams them into the ground. The horns refuse to break, which explains their high value. He pins the beasts under his foot and drives his dagger into the ground. The armored blade releases a shockwave, surprising him with its power. Realizing the effect, he cuts off their horns with ease but feels disappointed at how little challenge they posed. Holding the Darkhorn hog horns, Lee notes their worth as materials for legendary items. Since he already owns a strong dagger, he plans to sell them for profit. The system then announces that all monsters are defeated, and the gate will close in 3 minutes. Back in his apartment, Lee stares at his phone after posting an update about clearing the level 30 dungeon. The growing attention irritates him. He wonders how many level 32 gates are open nearby. Minsu replies that 2 exist in South Korea. Lee suspects Cholsung might wait for the level 33 gate instead, planning to do the same. Minsu suggests it could turn into a game of strategy. If both men wait, the first to clear the level 32 gate will force the other to move quickly. Meanwhile, Choi Cholsung stands before a gate with 4 players Lee had killed in his past life. Guanghu doubts the drug's effectiveness against someone as powerful as Lee. Yujin calls Lee's strength exaggerated, but Sanghyun warns that Lee's power might be real. Cholsung states he has no intention of facing Lee directly. Even if Lee's strength exceeds 1,000, he believes the enhanced ogres will overpower him. He explains that the SA2 drug multiplies a monster's stats by 20 for 24 hours. Confident in his plan, he decides to let the ogres kill Lee and then claim his items afterward. As they enter the gate, a group of black ogres appears. Cholsung pulls the pin from an SA2 smoke bomb and rolls it forward. The ogres inhale the drug and fall under its effect. Watching them transform, Cholsung smiles, planning to wait until the drug wears off before collecting Lee's remains. Then, he and his team leave the dungeon. Lee arrives at the gate with Minsu and notices the eerie silence. He concludes that the enemies have already used the drug on the black ogres. Spotting footprints, he wonders how the so-called top guild could be so careless. Minsu confirms the ogres are under the drug's effect and suggests waiting for the drug to wear off, but Lee refuses. Since they already know the monster's position, changing plans could alert the enemy. He invests all his bonus points into stamina and tells Minsu to hide because the general guild has seen his face. Minsu agrees and waits for Lee's call. Unseen, a surveillance bug from the guild records them. At the control room, the guild's operators track Lee's movements and fix the camera on the gate. They predict he will not last more than 3 hours. Their leader orders an immediate report to Cholsung. Inside the dungeon, the stench forces Lee to cover his nose. Moving silently with his dagger ready, he feels the ground tremble as black ogres approach, each gripping massive axes. They appear more monstrous than before, and despite his stealth, they sense him. Realizing their senses have sharpened because of the drug, he braces for battle. An ogre hurls its axe, but Lee activates armor and dodges. He casts Petrify, slashes the monster's leg, and drives his dagger into its back until it falls lifeless. Another ogre swings with great force, and though Lee blocks with armor, the impact throws him back. He acknowledges its power as more ogres rush forward. They throw their axes, but he evades with ease. Seeing their weapons scattered, he notes they are useless now. Grabbing one of the axes, he throws it at the chief ogre, severing its neck. As the body collapses, the pack roars in rage, and Lee readies another axe to face them one by one. With his immense strength, Lee snaps the ogre's arm, leaving it dangling uselessly. The creature roars in pain and swings its other arm, but Lee dodges and crushes its leg. The beast collapses, and Lee stands over it, deciding not to kill it yet to keep the gate open. Around him lie 9 lifeless ogres, yet the Eye of God remains hidden. Thoughts of Choi Chulsung and the general guild surface, and he resolves to draw them inside the dungeon. He tosses the ogres' heads out of the gate and steps outside, taunting the hidden watchers. Their plan, he says, was neither clever nor effective, and urges them to come quickly. Then he returns inside, ready for their arrival. In the control room, the surveillance team watches in panic. The administrator contacts Cholsung, explaining that Lee has thrown out the ogres' heads. Cholsung realizes the situation and demands a poison strong enough to kill Lee. When told it is still in production, he orders the administrator's execution, declaring that all useless people will die from now on. He then commands the team to create an enhancer that can pierce Lee's armor within 3 hours. In his office, Cholsung crushes a poison enhancer in anger. The enhancer once fueled his rise in the previous timeline, when his poison skill earned him the title of Poison King. By using future technology, he could produce toxins that pierced monsters' defenses, but even now, he lacks a poison strong enough to break Lee's armor. Determined, he orders his 4 players to kill Lee within 2 hours. If captured, they must end their own lives to protect the plan. Guangho hesitates, but Cholsung warns that failure will not be forgiven and promises they will be remembered as heroes if they succeed. Back inside the dungeon, new black ogres emerge. One swings its axe, but Lee dodges easily. Slaying them only causes more to appear, and he starts to find the fight tedious. He punches one, killing it instantly, and decides to ignore the rest. Then a message flashes before him, announcing that the dungeon has reached its maximum number of players. Lee smirks, knowing that the General Guild has finally entered. Lee faces the General Guild players, and a chill runs through their spines. Yujin mutters in disbelief, while Guangho reminds the group that only 2 hours remain before Master Cholsung arrives with the new poison to kill Lee. Lee calmly observes how unprepared they look. Guangho notices something unsettling. Lee stands without a single wound. He urges everyone to prepare for battle, declaring they only need to endure 2 hours. Yujin tries to flee in panic, but Lee moves faster, closing the distance and snapping her neck. The others freeze as Lee remarks that ending her quickly was mercy. Wusung orders his team to stay calm, believing they can stall Lee long enough to become heroes in the guild's history. Lee steps forward, seizing Guangho by the neck and activates the Eye of the Reversal. Peering into his memories, Lee sees Cholsung drinking a poison enhancer that strengthens his toxins. Reversing the memory, he watches Cholsung's men discuss using enhancers from poison spiders, capable of killing instantly. Lee demands details from Guangho, who resists until Lee tightens his grip. Gasping for breath, Guangho confesses that the liquid adapts Cholsung's poison to match each monster. Lee finds the enhancer impressive. Continuing through the memory, Lee watches Cholsung ordering his lab to create a poison strong enough to pierce his armor. Hearing Cholsung's frustration at their slow progress, Lee chuckles, realizing his armor still cannot be broken. Searching further, he finds a memory of his past self being ordered to leave a gate claimed by the General Guild. When he refused, he slaughtered them all. There was no sign of the Eye of God then, but Lee decides to test the same method now. He demands to know why Cholsung has not appeared, but Guangho pleads for mercy instead. Realizing he will get no answer, Lee crushes his neck. As a black ogre drags away Yujin's body, Lee mutters that at least they will not interrupt him anymore. While examining the ogre corpses, Lee discovers something solid in one of their stomachs, the skill stone of the Eye of God. The ability allows him to view the status and inventory of any player or monster below his level. Holding the stone, Lee smirks, ready to step deeper into the darkness of the void. In the General Guild's conference room, footage of Lee plays on the screen. One player comments there is nothing left to analyze since Lee's strength is already beyond their reach. Another expresses disbelief that he could defeat monsters enhanced by the drug. The first responds that it was expected, as even with the drug, monsters remain only monsters. A player mentions the fight is not over because the Black Ogre Gate remains open. When asked why, another explains that Lee is waiting for his prey, not satisfied with only the Eye of God. The room falls silent as they realize he is waiting for Cholsung himself. Cholsung enters, and everyone greets him as master. Clutching his head in anger, he demands to know where the enhancer is. One player kneels and advises retreat, explaining that while development is complete, the final product will take 3 days. Cholsung warns that if Lee gains the unique class skill from the level 51 Golem Gate, they will never defeat him. The player assures him they will stop it, even at the cost of their lives. Cholsung asks if they are certain Lee will die in 3 days. When the player confidently agrees, Cholsung grabs his head and kills him with poison, declaring that incompetence is unacceptable. He orders full security around the lab and commands all guild players to guard it. Their goal is to kill Lee in the level 51 Golem dungeon and take everything he owns. Meanwhile, inside the gate, Lee realizes Cholsung might not come, meaning the enhancer is not yet ready. He considers wiping out the guild headquarters but decides killing only Cholsung would be more beneficial. Using the guild's influence would serve his plans better. From his past life's knowledge, he recalls their next target is the level 51 Silver Armor dungeon, which holds a unique skill. He understands Cholsung's plan to secure both the skill and a stronger enhancer. Determined to stop him, Lee activates stealth and leaves the gate, knowing the guild's eyes are still on him. Outside, he meets Minsu, who reveals the enhancer factory is in Paju. Using the Eye of God, Lee checks Minsu's stats and warns him to be careful, saying even standing too close could be dangerous. Minsu admits he expected Lee to gain the Eye of God, but witnessing it firsthand is unsettling. He points out the factory's exact location and shows the car he bought with the money from selling the ogre horn. As they head toward Paju, Lee allocates his over 2,000 bonus points into concentration, raising it to 2,786. He reasons that concentration strengthens the Eye of God, helping him read opponents' stats and weaknesses more precisely. Since his immense strength remains difficult to control, improving focus is essential. The system acknowledges his progress, granting him the title King of Concentration. At the Poison Enhancer factory in Paju, Lee and Minsu step out of the vehicle. Lee immediately casts Paralyze on his friend, a skill unlocked after reaching 1,000 concentration points. It disables one sense of a lower-level opponent for 5 seconds. The system asks which sense to block, and Lee selects vision. As Minsu goes blind, Lee tells him to wait outside. Lee punches the factory wall with immense force, making the entire building shake. Inside, technicians panic, thinking it is an earthquake. When one spots Lee and alerts the others, chaos spreads. Enraged that Chulsung is not there, Lee smashes the wall again, causing more destruction. Outside, Minsu watches the trembling building, barely believing what he sees. Spotting a surveillance camera, Lee speaks directly to it, warning that their enhancers will soon be destroyed. He gestures at a pillar and declares that once it falls, everything ends. He proposes a trade, saying there are things he wants from Chulsung, then crushes the camera. The next morning, Lee sits on the rubble as Chulsung arrives. Using the Eye of God, Lee scans his stats. Realizing this, Chulsung curses at him. Lee notes his poison skill, capable of causing death with an 80% chance. Chulsung calls him a coward, but Lee reminds him that without his help, Chulsung would have died in the Black Ogre dungeon. According to Lee, victory decides who the coward truly is. Chulsung attacks with poison, but Lee evades and closes the distance. His speed shocks Chulsung. Grabbing him by the neck, Lee withstands the poison with his armor. He remarks that only a stronger enhancer could have pierced it. Using the Eye of Reversal, Lee reads Chulsung's memories, uncovering his skills, items, and the final hidden dungeon. Chulsung laughs suddenly, and before Lee can react, he throws poison toward Minsu. It strikes, infecting him. Consumed by rage, Lee ends Chulsung with a single punch. Retrieving the poison skill stone from the corpse, he rushes to his friend, who begins to heal after absorbing it. Lee scolds Minsu for standing too close. When Minsu asks if the poison skill now belongs to him, Lee confirms. Minsu thanks him, but Lee dismisses it and tells him to prepare for future gates. They will need the equipment from them. That day marks the death of Chulsung, once the most feared man in Korea. The next day, headlines across Korea declare Criminal of the Century Chulsung dead and General Guild officials arrested. Reporters question who defeated the underground leader. Lee reads the news as Minsu suggests revealing the truth, since the public now sees Chulsung's killer as a hero. Lee refuses, explaining that players who seek fame always meet tragic ends. In a world where everyone hunts for power, exposing his identity would invite danger. Many would covet his skills or possess technology like the poison enhancer capable of killing him. He states that when everything ends, he will build his own monument to record his achievements. Reading a comment asking about the Poison King's lost poison, he reflects that after death, only a person's skills and items are valued. Setting his sights forward, he declares their next goal, the unique class skill hidden in the level 50 silver armor dungeon. The records name it Assassin, and though he does not know its power, he believes following his past path step by step will be the fastest way. A system alert shows his bonus points continue to rise, likely due to the knowledge gained from the General Guild. Since he alone did not reset, his growth mirrors a main story quest. He plans to collect key items and progress faster. Minsu, now stronger with Chulsung's poison skill and a bag of enhancers, can hunt alongside him. Though destroying the factory limited their supply, it was still the right choice. Minsu suggests using the alias Joker Kim for Lee's game account, recalling it as a legendary name from the past. Lee accepts and tells him to reach level 34 before their next dungeon. By January 29th, Minsu clears the level 34 Blue Pheasant dungeon, and Lee advances to 37. Their rapid progress sparks rumors online. Some speculate that Joker Kim might be Lee's ally, while others insist the Great Lone Lee never keeps companions. That night, Lee leans against a wall, speaking to Minsu over the phone. Minsu praises the enhancers, saying monsters melt before his poison. He plans to rest after one more run. Lee warns him not to underestimate his enemies and to call once he clears it. Hanging up, Lee reflects that nearly a month has passed since the reset. Without resting, he has advanced rapidly. Opening his status window, he assigns all bonus points to agility, earning the title King of Agility and unlocking a new skill, Gravity Control. Testing it on a tree, he sets the weight to 100 tons, but the system rejects it. Lowering it to 2 tons, the tree collapses under the force, and he feels an overwhelming sense of power. A warning flashes. His actions will greatly affect the future. Just then his phone rings. Minsu's panicked voice breaks through, shouting that a level 100 lichen has appeared. The line goes dead. Lee realizes the system's warning referred to this very moment. He dashes toward Minsu's gate, knowing the future he has been changing has finally begun to unfold. Minsu lies injured outside the level 38 gate, struggling to breathe. When Lee arrives, he immediately asks what happened. Minsu explains that a level 100 monster is inside. Confused how such a beast appeared in a gate meant for 38. Lee notices the deep wound on his arm, and Minsu admits the strike never touched him. The wind alone tore his flesh. Suspecting the dungeon may hold an item of equal level, Lee moves toward the gate. Minsu pleads for him to stop, but Lee ignores him and steps inside. Within the dungeon, Lee finds serpents with flames burning at their tails. Believing them to be the gate's main threat, he crushes one underfoot and uses its body to strike down the rest. The silence that follows makes him doubt Minsu's words, until a low growl breaks through the air. A towering lichen emerges, gripping a scythe. Activating the Eye of God, Lee confirms it as a level 100 lichen, a result of the butterfly effect. The distorted future has arrived. The lichen attacks with its scythe, but Lee dodges and retaliates with brutal precision. He lashes its face with the serpent's body, but the beast barely flinches. When it unleashes its execute skill, Lee evades again, closes the distance, and slams it to the ground with a flick to the head. A flurry of strikes follows until the monster collapses lifeless. Level up notifications flood his vision, his level soaring to 62. Among the loot, he spots the lichen's broadsword, its power immense, yet locked behind a level requirement of 100. Frustrated, he stows it away and finishes carving the creature before leaving the dungeon. Outside, the news shocks him. Lichens are appearing worldwide, in New York, Tokyo, and beyond. The World Player Association president urges global unity, while Board, America's top player, calls the crisis beyond comprehension. Watching the chaos unfold, Lee admits the truth. It is his fault. His actions altered the future, summoning the lichens into this world. The president announces that new gates will not appear until the strongest monsters are slain. Lee realizes this means the level 39 gates remain sealed. Minsu feels a momentary relief, but Lee knows it only delays their progress. Turning away from the screen, he declares their next move. They will head to the airport. Their destination is Japan, where the lichens await. Lee and Minsu arrive at the airport, masks covering their faces. The receptionist informs them that all flights to Japan are cancelled due to the lichen outbreak. Minsu replies he has already received the same answer from every airline. The receptionist, confused by their persistence, warns them to leave at once, saying even the president cannot lift the ban and that they would die if they went. Minsu urges Lee to remove his mask. Since the airport is nearly empty, Lee takes it off. The receptionist recognizes him instantly. When Lee states he must go to Japan to kill the lichen, the man hesitates but admits it is dangerous even for him. Lee sighs, pulls out the lichen's broadsword, and drops it when it refuses to equip. The receptionist stares in disbelief, understanding that Lee meant the World Player Association's private jet when he asked for a comfortable plane. With help from Japan's government and the association, Lee and Minsu soon depart on a luxurious flight. The calm of the journey fades quickly when Nami, a researcher, begins explaining the lichen's unmatched defense. Lee cuts her off, asking to rest, but she insists it is for humanity's sake. Irritated, Lee dismisses her. Startled, she admits no man has ever ignored her like this, and reminds him that hundreds are fighting the lichen in Japan. When he asks how to silence her, she refuses, saying humanity depends on him. Lee finds her words troublesome and says he no longer wishes to fight, leaving her speechless. After the captain calls her to the cockpit, Lee finally rests, but Nami soon returns with urgent news. The lichen has begun summoning monsters from other dungeons to destroy cities. When the plane lands, they prepare to part ways. Minsu hugs Nami tightly, pretending to be a helpless orphan, while Lee reflects she still does not know he is a player. Nami promises they will meet again and tells Lee to head to the Tokyo hotel surrounded by skyscrapers. Lee nods and walks off with Minsu, who wishes the moment had lasted longer. Soon, they reach a gate glowing with gray light. Lee studies it, realizing it is another result of the lichen's chaos. The city's destruction confirms Nami's intel. The lichen is opening gates and unleashing monsters non-stop. Minsu explains that Japanese players are tracking it and waiting for the right time to strike. He offers to contact them, but Lee refuses and points toward the gate, deciding to handle it first. When fire serpents emerge, Lee questions why the locals have not cleared them. Minsu explains the gate opened early because of them. Lee reasons that as long as the monsters remain, the gate will stay open. He orders Minsu to release poison at the front while he handles the rest. As they fight, Lee earns bonus points from the butterfly effect and grows uneasy, remembering how it once spawned a level 100 monster inside a level 38 dungeon. Minsu suddenly reports that the lichen is heading toward them. Lee pauses, surprised, and wonders why it would come here. Minsu shows Lee live footage of the lichen. The creature releases a powerful energy blast that shoots toward the cameraman. The man screams for help before the screen turns black. Moments later, an emergency broadcast spreads across the nation, calling all players to arms. The message warns that the country stands on the brink of ruin, and that the United States is considering a nuclear strike. Citizens beg against it, pleading for the heroes to protect them. Lee reacts with irritation, wondering why they would use a nuke on something he could crush easily. The scene shifts to the battlefield where players struggle against the lichen and its horde. Bullets and magic attacks fly, yet the beast easily deflects them and retaliates with deadly slashes. Players shout orders, but their efforts fail. One mutters that if only he were level 60, things might be different. Another realizes that if the lichen breaks through, the country will fall. Back with Lee, Minsu reports that the lichen has changed direction. It is now heading for the nuclear power plant, and disaster is less than an hour away. Lee clenches his teeth, curses the beast, and decides to move. He pours all 1,545 bonus points into strength, raising his total to 5,852. As they rush forward, he asks who once held the highest strength. Minsu recalls Board from the United States, who had about 1,500 strength at level 658. Lee cuts him off, saying those numbers mean nothing now since the world has changed. They soon reach the battlefield where exhausted players are barely holding the line. Explosions shake the ground. Lee surveys the chaos and mutters that it is a complete mess. Minsu points out that the nuclear plant is nearby and that nearly every player in Japan has gathered. Lee questions if the top Japanese players who cleared the final dungeon are present, then scoffs that they must have run away. Minsu admits Japan's representative vanished after the reset, and Lee dismisses them all as worthless. A player notices them and shouts something, but the language barrier leaves them confused. Lee jokes that maybe he asked about lunch, and Minsu laughs weakly. Then the lichen's mocking laughter echoes across the battlefield. Lee calls it clever for taunting them, and orders Minsu to assist the others while he handles the beast. Climbing a skyscraper, Lee overlooks the battle below. Hundreds of players line rooftops, launching attacks that light up the sky. Fireballs, arrows, and thunderbolts rain down, shaking the city. The lichen counters, smashing buildings and scattering players. Their leader rallies them, raising a fireball high and commanding everyone to strike together. The explosion signals a massive barrage that forces the lichen to one knee. Cheers erupt as they believe victory is near, but the creature rises in fury. The lichen lifts its sword and prepares a devastating circular slash aimed at the skyscrapers. Despair fills the players as they realize the attack will annihilate them. From above, Lee watches the destruction unfold and decides it is finally time to step in. Lee uses the Petrify skill on the lichen, freezing it in place. The players watch in disbelief, recognizing the ability. One murmurs that it must be Petrify, while another insists the King of Strength could not possibly be there. Lee leaps from the skyscraper, lands before the motionless beast, and flicks its head. The lichen dies instantly, and his level rises several times at once. The players erupt in cheers, hailing him as their savior and king. Though he cannot understand their words, Lee assumes they are praising him. He pulls out his dagger, searches the corpse, and finds a glowing level 100 mana stone. Holding it, he recalls how mana stones once replaced coal, their value tied to the monster's level. He reaches for the lichen's broadsword, but it vanishes into his inventory. A system message reminds him he cannot equip it until level 100. Nami, watching from afar, remarks that his arrogance was not misplaced. Lee tells her to ready the jet, saying he will handle the lichen in the United States as well. She informs him that it was already destroyed with a missile in the desert. Lee acknowledges this, noting their vast land made it possible. Nami adds that Japan's emperor and prime minister wish to thank him, but he dismisses the offer and focuses instead on scanning other players with the Eye of God. At the airport, a massive crowd gathers to welcome him. Reporters ask if he will face future monsters. Lee replies that it depends on how the country treats him. He mentions that Japan treated him well, recalling how more people had watched his battle than the prime minister's speech. After a brief exchange, he disappears with Minsu using stealth. Nami calls after him, saying the president of Korea is on his way. Lee replies that she should tell the president he is busy and will meet him later. As he leaves, he reflects on the coming of a special dungeon. Now, at level 71, he remembers that in the past, it appeared when his stats reached 4,000. His current total exceeds 15,000, yet the gate has not opened. He suspects it requires all bonus points to be used. After applying them to strength, raising it to 8,757, the system confirms the opening of a special dungeon. Lee smiles, realizing he was right. The butterfly effect skill had triggered the event, but the gate's location remains unknown and will close within 30 seconds once found. Hearing Nami's continued calls, Lee cancels his stealth and reappears. He asks where the president is. Inside the VIP room, the president greets him warmly and thanks him for representing the nation, adding that relations with Japan have improved because of him. Lee responds with respect. The president admits he likely did the same in the past timeline and apologizes for not expressing gratitude sooner. Lee assures him it is fine. The president reveals plans to reward him with a higher title than national merit, but Lee declines and says he has a request. He considers revealing the secret of the special gates but decides against it, fearing interference. Instead, he reports that a golden special gate has opened. The president is stunned and demands confirmation. Lee explains it is true and warns that a monster stronger than the lichen lies within. He adds that the gate closes within 30 seconds of discovery and must be found quickly. The president orders immediate action and promises full support. Lee notes that he has spoken only truth, though he hides the part about the dungeon's rewards. Wanting more than just government aid, he finally requests that the president keep the matter secret and avoid making it public. In the control room of the National Crisis Management Office, Lee stands beside the president. The president remarks that if Lee's words are true, then the Golden Gate could become as great a threat to Korea as the lichen was to Japan. Lee replies that from experience, the monster inside will be far stronger. An order is issued to search the country using cameras. Lim, head of National Crisis Management, raises a concern. If the gate closes within 30 seconds and a monster stronger than the lichen appears, why not send other players instead? Lee insists he must be the first to enter, explaining that the Golden Gate not only holds a powerful monster, but also grants rare rewards known as special skills and items. Lim finds this unbelievable, saying that over 100 players in the control room have regressed, yet none have seen such a dungeon. Lee admits this is why he hesitated to speak, but he refuses to lie. Whether they believe him or not is their choice. Lim turns to the president, arguing that Lee's request hints at monopolization. Keeping the search secret would allow him to claim all rewards, making him too powerful, like an uncontrollable weapon. The president asks for suggestions. Lim proposes banning Lee from entering dungeons and sending government players instead. Lee reflects bitterly that perhaps he should not have killed the lichen so quickly. He pulls out the lichen's broadsword, which drops to the floor since he still cannot equip it. He remarks that Korea had its own lichen, and maybe leaving it alive would have made them realize the harshness of the world, where players fight endlessly for survival and power. Lee points to the sword and questions Lim directly. Monopolization is common, driven by instinct and ambition. He asks if this desire for strength is wrong, but Lim stays silent. Lee turns to the president for judgment. The president agrees that if a dungeon does not belong to the government, then they cannot restrict entry. Monopolization is part of a player's ability. Lee asks if that means he can freely enter the special dungeon, since he received no reward for killing the lichen in Korea. The president agrees. Lee declares that he will take this special gate as compensation and claims rights to all future ones. He then demands Lim's dismissal, arguing that as head of crisis management, Lim should have supported strength, not feared it. The president urges calm, but Lee insists, calling Lim's thinking pathetic. While the discussion continues, satellites locate the special gate, and Lim is dismissed. Later, in the car, Lee remarks that people only listen when he goes to extremes. Minsu admits everyone trembled when he spoke. Lee wonders why they never listened the first time. The gate is located in Sokcho near the beach. Minsu reminds him to stay cautious, even if he believes nothing can harm him. Lee agrees as they reach the forest where the gate glows faintly. It is marked as a level A dungeon, though both find it suspiciously low. Then, a system message appears, announcing that the player who created the special gate is Lee. It warns that others can also obtain special skills and surpass him. Knowing every player will see the message, Lee prepares to enter as the 30-second countdown begins. Inside, his vision flashes red. All stats restricted, all skills and items disabled. The shock unsettles him. A red goblin appears, laughing at the foolish human. It is the level 200 dungeon guardian. Lee realizes the Eye of God cannot activate. The goblin assures him not to fear, saying it is not his true opponent. This dungeon is not about fighting monsters, but about something else. It tells him to do his best, curious to see what he can achieve, and reveals that Lee is already famous in their dimension. Lee stands silent, wondering about this strange fame. Lee asks the red goblin if this is entertaining for him. The goblin acts frightened and begs him to stop, but Lee finds the conversation pointless. A system message appears, revealing that this level 2 special dungeon is not for monster hunting. It instructs him to unlock one attribute to clear the dungeon. Lee selects strength, reasoning that since he cannot assess the situation, guessing is all he can do. The goblin warns that choosing strength will make the challenge harder. Lee orders him to stay quiet, grabs him by the neck, and demands to know who the real opponent is. A new notification appears, and Lee is transported into a vast desert where a tall tower stands. The system instructs him to claim the stat rune at the top. He assumes the rune increases attributes and regrets sparing the goblin. Inside, a spiral staircase winds upward, and a timer appears. 18 hours until death. Panic grips him at the thought of dying without his stats or skills. He begins climbing, but arrows suddenly shoot from hidden traps, grazing his cheek. Soon, a boulder rolls down the stairs, forcing him to retreat. Realizing strength is useless here, he curses his choice but keeps going. Exhausted, he hides between fallen boulders at the tower's base, breathing heavily. His body feels completely human now. Climbing again seems impossible, but the timer still shows 16 hours left. As he leans on the wall, he notices the tightly stacked stone bricks and comes up with a new idea. The goal is only to obtain the rune, not to climb. Destroying the tower might work. He lifts a large boulder and hurls it at the wall. The stones crack, and the structure begins to collapse. Within moments, the entire tower crumbles to the ground. Among the rubble, Lee spots a glowing rune. It is the strength stat rune, granting 2,000 points. Relief fills him as he picks it up and swallows it. The system announces the dungeon is cleared and begins transporting him back. When he reappears, the red goblin stares in disbelief. He screams that Lee destroyed the entire tower and that the rune was meant for another player. Trembling, he pleads for his life, but Lee steps forward and cuts him down. A final notification appears, declaring the dungeon cleared and the gate closing in 3 minutes. Lee sits on his sofa, reflecting that more than one special gate has opened. This means another player now has the chance to cross 1,000 points in an attribute. Someone has already reached that level without even advancing to level 300. Since some of Lee's stats are still under 1,000, his king titles are not at risk, but he knows he must act. He opens his stat window and adds 1,400 points each to mana and stamina. Mana rises to 1,853 and stamina to 1,990. The system grants him 2 new achievements, King of Mana and King of Stamina. Each title brings a new skill. Mana restriction halts mana flow within range for 5 seconds, while blood flow increases an enemy's circulation, causing heavier damage. Relief washes over him as he realizes he can now bend stats to his will. Then a system warning appears, stating that his actions are shaking the future. He frowns, uncertain what it means. At the World Player Association's United States branch, members discuss the new achievement. They agree it could only be Lee. One mentions Yahello, but she calmly says it is fine if it was him. Others argue, recalling how Lee once ignored their requests and insulted them. Yahello defends him, saying those who know him understand he is not bad. They confirm that Lee crafted the special gate, meaning anyone can now gain special skills and rival him. Concern grows about someone so uncontrollable holding such power. Yahello insists he is not dangerous, just unpredictable. They ask her about her own gate experience. She explains that there were no monsters to hunt, only a tower with a rune at the top. A red goblin guided her, and without him, she would have died. Swallowing the rune gave her 2,000 mana. Hearing this, they realize Lee's achievements are even greater. Some warn he might have already cleared multiple special gates. The group concludes that the association must gain control of future gates. They order Yahello to travel to Korea and monitor reports. She understands they want her to surpass Lee, though she has no desire to. Meanwhile, Min-soo explains to Lee that the association claims to serve the greater good, but works much like a guild. Its members are elite players who choose fame over wealth. Acting as a world army, the association manages dungeon access and receives government funding. Lee understands their influence but knows hidden agendas exist within. He asks about the player who cleared the United States gate. Min-soo tells him it was Yahello, known as the Witch, who controls mana through buffs and debuffs. She once held the title of King of Mana, and now, after gaining 2,000 mana from the tower, she challenges his position again. With more gates, she might match him, and news of her power is already spreading. Just then, Lee's phone rings with an emergency alert. A level 220 gargoyle has appeared in Bundangu, Seongnamsi, and Gyeonggi-do. Citizens are ordered to evacuate as a national emergency is declared. The creature, with a human body, dragon wings, and fire breath, is already destroying everything in sight. Driving toward the scene, Lee speaks with the president. The president pleads for help, saying 3 gargoyles have destroyed the Tech Valley, including major IT company headquarters. Lee replies that he is already on his way and orders the president to clear the area. The president agrees but adds that rumors are spreading. People believe Lee himself created the special gates and caused the disasters. Lee laughs and says he is not some god. The one who created the system also made the monsters. The president agrees but adds that people now believe Lee summons monsters to grow stronger. Lee admits there is some truth to that, but explains that if he truly had such power, he would summon them right in front of his house. The president accepts his point and assures him the areas have been evacuated, wishing him luck. Lee reminds him that in return for hunting the gargoyles, he wants to be informed first when the next special gate appears. The president asks if this is a condition for fighting, but Lee clarifies it is a necessity. The president agrees, and Lee ends the call as they near the site. He parks and tells Min-soo they will continue on foot. Min-soo spots someone ahead and asks who it is. Lee looks and notes that the president was supposed to clear the area. He calls out, and the woman responds. Activating the Eye of God, he recognizes her stats and realizes it is Yahello. She greets him warmly as Brother Lee, which surprises him. He grabs her hand to confirm something, and uses the Eye of Reversal to view her memories. He sees the red goblin helping her in the special dungeon, urging her to grow stronger to kill him. Disgusted, Lee mutters that the creature is pathetic, and vows to find whoever created the game. He tries to look deeper into her memories of the final dungeon, seeing her injured but urging him to finish the game. When he asks who hurt her, she resists and uses mana to block him. Amused by her skill, he lets it go and asks why she came. Yahello admits she came to see him. Min-soo warns Lee not to trust her. She turns to Min-soo and teases him, saying she didn't know Lee had such a cute friend. Lee presses her again for an answer. Yahello smiles and says he still needs her, just like before. Lee challenges her to prove it, curious to see if she can. The tension feels oddly familiar to him. A loud crash interrupts them as 3 gargoyles appear. Lee asks if they have any weaknesses. Hayleh admits she knows none. One gargoyle charges, and Lee quickly pulls both her and Minsu aside. The creature takes flight. Lee uses gravity control, setting its weight to 2 tons, but nothing happens. At 3 tons it groans, and at 4 tons it crashes down. Lee leaps onto it, grips its neck, and slams it back to the ground as its screams echo through the air. Minsu and Hayleh watch as dust rises from the crash, hiding the scene. The gargoyle soon emerges from the rubble, and Hayleh gasps in disbelief. Minsu calls for Lee, uncertain of his whereabouts. Lee steps out from behind the fallen stones, breathing heavily, admitting he almost died. He uses Petrify on the gargoyle, stabs its neck, and activates blood flow, causing it to collapse. Minsu realizes this is real. Lee has killed the gargoyle. Checking his stats, Lee sees his level rise from 71 to 93. He then turns toward the 2 remaining gargoyles. One breathes fire, but Lee dodges swiftly. The heat brushes past Minsu, who comments on its intensity. Unable to stand by, Hayleh steps forward and casts buffs, raising Lee's strength by 200. Lee looks at her, amused by her effort, while Minsu warns that the gargoyles are attacking again. Lee activates his armor, and the system notifies him that his skills have strengthened through concentrated mana. He leaps high, grabs both gargoyles by the neck, and slams them to the ground, killing them instantly. His level rises again as he stares at his blood-covered hands, surprised by his own power. Hayleh reminds him she has supported him like this before. When he questions her, she frowns and says he never changes. Before he can reply, the president calls, thanking him for saving the country. Lee assumes he watched everything live, and the president confirms. Lee instructs him to share special gate locations through the Crisis Management Office. A system notification appears for all 3. The president reports a new special gate has opened. Lee frowns, wondering why the system gave no warning and suspects the god behind it seeks to test or destroy him. Hayleh reads the message aloud. The gate appeared because of Lee's overwhelming strength, now at level 117. It is in Gangseo-gu, and she asks to join him, promising not to interfere. Lee asks why she wants to follow. Hayleh says she came to Korea for him and refuses to obey the World Player Association. She insists she decides her own path. Lee agrees, on the condition that she shares every piece of information she receives. She promises she will do anything for him. Minsu mutters that her buffs are useful but questions her intentions. Hayleh replies that Lee must save the world and end the game. Minsu doubts her words, but she insists her reason is personal. She reminds Lee of what he once said, that players would rule the world after the game ended. Lee admits he does not remember, and she smiles, saying those words now guide her. Lee shakes his head, realizing he might have inspired something dangerous. Still, he smiles faintly as they head back to the car together. Lee, Minsu, and Hayleh stand before the special dungeon gate. It is a level 3 dungeon, limited to 2 players, ranked A+ in difficulty. Lee notes the change and steps closer. Hayleh asks if she should join, but he shakes his head, warning it could be dangerous. She agrees and watches as he enters alone. Inside, a red goblin waits. The moment it sees Lee, it recognizes him and reacts nervously. Lee senses something wrong and demands to know what it is hiding. The goblin hesitates, so Lee activates Eye of God, revealing its true power, level 300 with all stats at 3000. Grabbing the goblin by the head, he forces it to explain. Panicking, the goblin reveals the dungeon's objective, to block monsters coming through the tunnels below. Lee listens as it explains the setup. He must stop the creatures from crossing the ravine. When he asks what kind of monsters, the goblin admits they are gargoyles, level 220. Hearing this, Lee recalls killing 3 earlier that day and warns the goblin not to lie. As he walks away, the goblin asks if he is really alone. Lee confirms, and the system announces the mission has begun. Survive 3 hours or die. Lee jumps into the ravine as the goblin smirks above, confident his death is certain. Soon a swarm of gargoyles appears. Using gravity control, paralyze, and petrify, Lee dodges their attacks and crushes them with ease. He drains their blood using blood flow and levels up again. Before he can rest, a second wave arrives. Instead of fear, a grin spreads across his face as he prepares for more. Above, the red goblin warns Hayleh to leave, but she refuses, saying she is a player too. Ignoring its protests, she leaps down to join Lee. When he asks why she followed, she admits she had a bad feeling. He asks about Minsu, and she assures him he stayed outside. Her arrival strengthens his skills as mana flow concentrates, lowering the dungeon's difficulty. Lee looks around in disbelief as the gargoyles suddenly turn into goblins. Frustrated, he smashes the ground, killing them all instantly. He realizes someone is manipulating the dungeon, testing his limits. Hayleh notices his tense expression and asks what is wrong, but he brushes it off. When she offers to deal with the red goblin, Lee silently acknowledges her loyalty, realizing she may have been his ally in a past life. Later, Lee confronts the red goblin again, gripping its head tightly. Trembling, it insists it only followed orders. Lee's tone hardens as he demands to know who gave those orders, his patience finally gone. Lee listens as the Red Goblin begs for mercy, promising to reveal the truth if spared. It explains that their god controls the game channel. Lee questions if it is truly a god, and the goblin insists it is, claiming it watches everything within the game. Lee smirks and raises his middle finger to the air, knowing the god must be watching. The goblin admits the god interfered because Lee broke the game's balance. Lee frowns, pointing out they made him this way. The goblin pleads ignorance, saying it only followed orders to raise the dungeon difficulty when Lee entered. Disappointed, Lee sighs and crushes its skull, ending its life. Yahello steps forward and says he can meet the god in the final dungeon. Lee looks at her, curious. She explains that the god is the one who created the entire game. A system notification confirms Lee cleared the level 3 special dungeon and rewards him with 3,000 bonus points. Lee asks if they will have to fight that god, and Yahello nods. He wonders if the god is human, but she admits she never saw it. When he asks who killed her before, she names Park Musung. Hearing the name, Lee orders her to stay still and activates Eye of Reversal to view her memories. In her memories, Musung stands before her, mocking her weakness without Lee. He calls her the witch Yahello, breaks her skills, and stabs her as she falls, thinking she must warn Lee. Lee freezes the vision and asks what she wanted to tell him then. Yahello replies that he can already see it. When pressed, she admits Musung had a sword skill that could pierce his armor, though she does not know how. Before Lee can ask more, a system warning appears, saying the gate will close in 3 minutes. Outside, Yahello checks her status window in disbelief, realizing the points are real. Lee distributes his bonus points into strength, raising it beyond 21,000. Minsu groans from dizziness, and Yahello suggests their stats may be affecting their bodies. Lee tests his power, activates armor, and punches the ground, leaving a deep crater. A notification appears. Armor has evolved to level 3, unlocking Final Blow, a skill that absorbs excess power and releases it at the cost of most of his health. Minsu panics, urging him to stop before collapsing the area. Lee studies the skill and mutters it is useless unless he faces someone who can truly challenge him. Soon, news spreads of a player surpassing 1,000 stat points within a month. Analysts declare the world has changed and new strategies are needed. Lee reads the headlines and laughs, hoping stronger players will finally emerge. As special gates appear across the world, players grow faster and hunt tougher monsters. Watching this, Lee decides to pause his dungeon hunts, letting others catch up. The faster they grow, the more the world evolves, and the greater his own rewards become. Yet one thought lingers in his mind: Park Musung. Lee and Yahello stand before the statues. Yahello laughs when she sees Lee's statue showing the middle finger, calling it ridiculous. Lee notices Park Musung's statue is smaller and covered in graffiti, never updated since it was built. Lee contacts the president, complaining about the statues in Gwanghwamun Square. He argues his statue should be moved because he has not achieved feats like Admiral Yi Sun-sin or King Sejong. The president reminds him he saved the world, but Lee insists his actions were for personal gain, making the statue embarrassing. The president explains it was chosen by national vote, declaring Lee a hero, yet Lee still demands it be moved. The president reluctantly agrees. Lee then asks about removing Park Musung's statue. Before the president can respond, Lee destroys it. He explains the act is being streamed live, so Musung will see his reputation ruined and be forced to abandon his false hero image. He tells the president to place his statue in front of Musung's house instead. The Blue House reacts quickly, broadcasting the footage nationwide. The public is shocked, questioning why Musung remains silent. They recall his past power but notice his absence now. Yahello explains Musung became a player only 5 years before the final dungeon appeared, rising to the top within that short time. Most believe becoming a player comes from finding a gate or gaining mana from monsters. Lee realizes Musung has not yet awakened in this timeline. Minsu calls this good news, and Lee agrees. Musung must face strong monsters to become a player again. This gives Lee time to prepare. When Musung finally awakens, Lee plans to either kill him instantly or brand him a traitor, forcing him into hiding. Lee contacts the president again, asking for an article portraying Musung as the worst man in history, hiding behind a hero's mask. He is certain Musung will not stay silent after that. Elsewhere, a red goblin forces stat stones into a gargoyle's throat, promising it power to kill Lee. He debates keeping some for himself, but decides the gargoyle is his only hope. If it kills Lee, it will lead all monsters. Meanwhile, other players continue clearing gates, helping Lee indirectly. He waits for the level 51 gate in Korea, which grants the assassin class skill. Lying Do suggests he rest, and Minsu agrees. A system warning appears, stating his actions are greatly altering the future. Lee lies back, puzzled. Yahello asks about it, and he replies that another level 200 monster is about to emerge. Suddenly, a gate opens. A level 51 silver armor gate filled with players, rated difficulty A. Yahello warns they have no time to rest. Lee smirks, saying they will achieve 2 goals today as the gargoyle-like figure appears and the battle begins. The monster lands heavily, shaking the ground. Lee instantly summons his armor and charges forward. The creature growls and traps both his arms in its grip. Lee flinches, then activates the Eye of God. The scan reveals the monster's level, 230, with stats far beyond normal. He turns to Minsu and Yahello, asking what the numbers should be. Yahello replies they should not exceed 3,000. Minsu warns him not to waste time and to finish it quickly, reminding him that hesitation brings curses. Lee mutters in disbelief as he reads over 20,000 total stats. Yahello freezes, unable to process the number. Lee grabs the monster by the neck and slams its face into the ground, but it rises again. He uses Petrify, yet the effect lasts barely 3 seconds before breaking. Lee realizes the skill might be too weak against such high stats. Kaylee, the gargoyle, attacks with immense force. Lee dodges while Minsu recognizes the move, noting it has never been this powerful. Yahello senses the immense mana around it and warns Lee to stay alert. Lee grips its head again, slamming it down repeatedly until it finally collapses. He levels up several times. Catching his breath, Lee wonders if the creature had absorbed stat runes. Minsu points out they entered the gate immediately, so no one else could have altered it. Lee agrees, realizing something strange is happening again. Yahello, alarmed, questions how a level 230 monster could have over 20,000 stats. She asks Lee where his power truly comes from, and if he is the one creating the special gates. Lee admits it is partly true. He triggers the gates but does not create them. As they speak, Lee draws his dagger and cuts open the monster's body. Inside, he finds several stat stones. Yahello gasps while Lee laughs, realizing what this means. To confirm, he feeds one stone to the silver armor monster and scans it again with the Eye of God. When he spots a stat rune inside, the truth becomes clear. Lee smirks and curses the red goblin, knowing exactly who is behind it.